So your films have a thread running through them, that of individuals who through a patient and understanding of their own goals, artistic or otherwise, create something extraordinary. What makes Secret Mall Apartment a unique overview in that type of creation series?
I think you're right, Patrick. Like all my films kind of, they go into these like very, unique territories, kind of strange characters, but they're all really accessible and they remind you that there's really extraordinary people amongst us.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that I've just so interested in as a filmmaker, I know it sounds like a cliche, but the extraordinary amongst the ordinary. And with Secret Mall Apartment, I mean, it was exactly that. Here were these 8 artists who were doing this crazy stunt, this crazy prank. And yet, as you kind of dig in deeper and it starts like unspooling and unspooling, you start realizing that they're not just these pranksters, these punks, but you start realizing that they're maybe also they fit in that kind of, extraordinary amongst the ordinary kind of theme as well. And that's what really excited me about this project.
It's brilliant. The mall, while taking over the space in what I assume was a more interesting downtown Providence area, becomes a heartbeat in the film. You were always noting the proximity of the participants to it. In your assembling of the documentary's pieces, besides the secret apartment, what other elements of that building gave it a heartbeat status?
The building, for your listeners, this was the biggest construction project in the history of Rhode Island. It just
Interesting.
sits in in the middle of downtown Providence. You can't navigate Providence without sort of navigating the mall. It's right in the middle of downtown. It's right next to the 95 freeway. So you're just kind of like, it's this giant behemoth in the middle of the
Wow.
city.
Wow.
And it became kind of one of the characters in this documentary and how it affected all these people around it, how it displaced people, how it, demolished neighborhoods, and how it really was this, gentrification story, gone to, the most nth degree.
Right.
So everything revolved around the sort of the orbit of this mall. And I think that's also why these characters that were so trying to figure out how to deal with the mall that came into their neighborhood and just sort
Right.
of displaced everything. It
Right.
was their reaction to this gigantic building that was put right in downtown.
The notion of ownership, exemplified by the building of the mall, the tearing down of the artist space, even the decline of the mall, is upended by the secret mall apartment project. What, in your viewpoint, regarding the strange labyrinth of ownership in America, which has led to many ways to our current governmental situation, speaks in this film?
You watch the movie, which is set in 2003 to 2007, and there's this real sense of irony. Irony about malls, all in this particular mall, irony about the role of malls in America,
Right.
irony about what a mall means in our communities. Because when you watch this nearly 20 years ago, you're just like, oh wow, malls were really an important thing in our world, in our
Yeah.
communities. It
Yeah.
was a place to go, it was a place to be at. And you watch it through that prism, and you're like, wow, things have really, really changed.
Yeah.
And it was also this incredible irony that was happening while we were making it, where
Right.
the mall itself was changing ownership and hitting just absolute hard times. So I think that adds this like really interesting, texture to it while you're watching this documentary.
One of the most brilliant parts of the secret mall apartment is Michael's brother. In the moment in which he is asked whether the installation of the apartment was art, and he uses a swear word. And in the sense of being in nothingness, this feels like a breakthrough. When you set aside that simple interview clip, when did it feel correct to use it as a definition in the film?
Well, I kind of always, a lot of people were talking to me about the secret apartment as this idea of art, which
Right.
is a complicated thing to kind of wrap your head around because you're watching this movie and it's like the world's greatest prank. It's the prank to end all pranks. And you're just like, this is a prank movie. And then what happens is as you're watching it, like even if you're not interested in art, and there's lots of viewers that, don't, aren't all that excited about art, capital A art. But when they watch the movie, they can't help themselves but be like, wait a second, this is something more than just a prank. There's some sort of sense of what this is. It's some sort of creative outlet. It's a trying to, present this idea of their lives as art. And it's all kind of confusing and it throws you for a loop. Because you go into this movie and you're like, I expect this to be a movie about a prank. And you come out of this movie and you're like, wait a second, did I just experience this whole story about like art and meaning and passion in your life? And it's been one of the sort of the fun parts of putting the movie out is watching that reaction.
Well, and then again, then Michael's brother's reaction is perfect.
Perfect.
No wonder you use it as I had punchline in there, but I didn't want to do a spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's kind of a punchline.
Yeah, exactly. So the art of money as power and dominion both clashes with and eventually tries to own projects like Secret Mall Apartment. Now, I didn't see this movie, but when you chronicled the artist's journey in Magical Universe, did you detect how money infiltrated and affected the art of Al Carby?
I've always been interested in people who, where money is not their main objective.
Okay,
that's something
right,
that
sure.
I've always been interested in the subjects of my films. People where they are doing art or they're doing something because they just can't not do it. And it's about their own passion. And I made a movie called Magical Universe that's about this artist, this unknown artist in Maine that was making Barbie doll dioramas by himself and nobody knew about him. He could care less about money. He would be doing this no matter what.
Right.
I made a documentary about Matt Green, who was walking every street of New York City,
Right.
and he's been doing it for 12 years or so. He lives on $5 a day, and just money is the last thing in his mind. And I found that common theme also hit with everybody in Secret Mall Apartment. These were
Right.
artists that have no interest in fame, notoriety, acclaim, even making a buck.
Right.
And it's such a different mindset than how we often think about art and commerce.
Right.
And it really kind of reminds you that, sometimes the most fascinating people are people that are just passionate and just do something because they have to.
I happened to be part of your journey from the 2021 South by Southwest Fest regarding Lily Topples the World. And I was covering the online fest for the first time. And I noted there were multiple themes like Secret Mall in that extraordinary profile. What did you learn about Zen and the art of domino toppling in making the film?
Yeah, so Lily Topples the World was my 2021 documentary about Lily Hevish, who is essentially the world's greatest domino toppler. She's a young woman. I filmed her for 3 years. I start filming her as she's a freshman in college.
Good
and
Lord.
She's this sort of quiet, girl who is really great at dominoes. And over the course of making the movie, she kind of blows up into this almost like a global icon with millions of subscribers on her YouTube and becoming like a role model to nerdy kids all over the world. And it was sort of, again, within theme on, with me, where I was now making another film about this quirky artist but really digging into something that she was doing, which was so interesting. Her art is ephemeral. She makes these domino artworks and topples them and then they're over and they're done and they don't exist anymore. And that was something that hit so hard with Secret Mall Apartment as well,
Right.
because these were temporary artists, all the artists in Secret Mall Apartment, they're doing art and they're, it's temporary.
Yeah.
And so there was a real connection from Lily Topples the World to Secret Mall Apartment. Also, by the way, I met Michael Townsend, the main subject of Secret Mall Apartment, while I was filming Lily Topples the World.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was filming her in Athens, Greece. She was doing a crazy domino topple. Yeah, she was doing a crazy domino topple with Erno Rubik, the 80-year-old creator of the Rubik's Cube. So she's doing this like domino piece with this 80-year-old Hungarian in Greece. And I'm filming her for Lily Topples the World. And the building that we were in was covered in tape art,
Wow.
which, you know, anyone that sees Secret Mall Apartment knows that tape art is this like weird artwork that Michael Townsend kind of invented and is somehow, believe it or not, it has a connection to the Secret Mall Apartment.
Did you flip out about your destiny somehow?
I flipped out at the moment. I was just like, this is wild and crazy and amazing, and I need to figure out, you know, why, you know, who this person was. And then I got meeting him, and he was so fascinating. And then I spent, I think, the next year trying to convince him and the 7 other artists of Secret Mall Apartment to let me make a documentary.
Yeah.
It took a year.
In the context of your new documentary and life in general, how does a key to nowhere become a key to everywhere?
So, without giving away too many spoilers, you know, the secret apartment, which was in this mall in Providence, they were so, you know, they committed to the bit so much that they built a cinder block wall and put in a locking door.
Yeah.
And they only had keys. Only the 8 people kept the keys. And what was astonishing was when I was interviewing a lot of these artists, realizing that, holy moly, they still kept all their keys, and several of them keep them on their keychain to this day. And I think it just kind of reminded me that, you know, we all come across these special moments in our lives. We all do. And it's not just, you know, the characters in this movie that are imbued with such meaning with our own lives, and that we always want to kind of remember. And there was such a neat aspect to the Secret Mall Apartment because that was this moment for all 8 of these people. So it wasn't just this prank. It wasn't just this artwork. It wasn't just this stance against corporate America. It was also the most meaningful 3 or 4 years for these 8 people. And it just created this, you know, this kind of texture to kind of just sink my teeth in as a filmmaker.
Brilliant, baby. This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.